I've always believed that numbers don't lie, even when people do. That Wednesday evening in March was no different from countless others before it. I was hunched over my laptop in my home office, reviewing our monthly expenditures as I did at the end of every month. The familiar glow of spreadsheets illuminated my face as I meticulously traced every dollar that flowed in and out of our accounts. It was a ritual that Linda, my wife of 12 years, had once found endearing but in recent months had started to mock as obsessive-compulsive bookkeeping. "It's just money, John," she'd say with that little laugh that used to make me smile. "Not everything needs to balance perfectly." But I knew better. Money tells stories, honest ones. And that night, our financial statements were telling me a story I wasn't prepared to hear. $5,000 transferred out of our joint savings account on the 3rd, another $7,500 on the 17th, and a third transfer of $6,200 just 2 days ago. Almost $19,000 in total, gone in a single month with no corresponding entries in our regular expenses. I scrolled back through the previous months. Smaller amounts, but a clear pattern. This wasn't new. It had been happening for at least 9 months. How had I missed it? The answer was painfully obvious. Linda had taken over paying the monthly bills last summer when I was working overtime on a major project. I had trusted her completely, only checking the overall balances rather than reviewing the detailed transactions. My stomach tightened into a knot as I pulled up the transaction details. Each transfer was authorized with Linda's credentials, moving money to an account I didn't recognize at Cayman National Bank. My first thought wasn't betrayal, it was concern. Was she in trouble? Gambling? Drugs? Being blackmailed? We'd always been honest with each other about our finances. We'd planned our future together, the vacation house in Maine, retirement at 55, traveling the world. Those dreams required discipline and planning. Linda knew that. I closed my laptop and walked downstairs, trying to compose myself. The house was quiet except for the soft music coming from the kitchen where Linda was preparing dinner. "Hey," I said, leaning against the door frame, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk about something?" Linda turned, wooden spoon in hand, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She was still beautiful at 40, with laugh lines that only added character to her face. "Sure, what's up?" "I was just going through our accounts," I began, watching her face carefully. "There are some transfers I don't recognize. Pretty significant ones." For just a fraction of a second, something flashed in her eyes. Alarm, perhaps, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. "Transfers? What do you mean?" "About $19,000 this month alone. To an account in the Cayman Islands." Linda set the spoon down and wiped her hands on a kitchen towel, buying time. I could almost see the calculations happening behind her eyes. "Oh God, John." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I was hoping you wouldn't notice." My heart sank. "Notice what exactly?" She pulled out a chair at our kitchen island and sat down, gesturing for me to do the same. "I've been worried about you. For months now." "Worried about me?" This wasn't the direction I'd expected the conversation to take. "The gambling, John." She reached for my hand across the counter. "I've known for a while, but I didn't know how to bring it up." I stared at her, bewildered. "What gambling? Please don't lie to me." Her eyes welled with tears. "I found the receipts from the casino in your jacket pocket last fall. Then I started noticing the money missing from our accounts. At first, I thought you were handling it, that maybe it was just a phase, but it kept getting worse." My mind reeled, trying to process what she was saying. "Linda, I haven't been to a casino in years. Not since that trip to Vegas with the guys before we were married." She shook her head. "I know this is hard to admit. Addiction is a powerful thing. That's why I've been moving some of our money to a secure account, to protect us, to protect our future." A tear slid down her cheek. I didn't want to confront you until I had a plan. I've been researching treatment options. The performance was flawless. The concern in her voice, the tremble of her hands, the tears. If I hadn't seen the transaction records myself, if I hadn't known with absolute certainty that I hadn't gambled a single dollar, I might have believed her. "That's your explanation?" I asked quietly. "That I'm secretly gambling away our savings?" "John, please, this is the first step, admitting there's a problem. We can get through this together." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Show me the receipts." "What?" she asked. "The gambling receipts you found in my jacket. Show them to me." "I didn't keep them. I was too upset," she replied. "Which jacket was it? What casino? What dates? If I'm gambling away thousands each month, surely you have some details." She faltered for only a moment. "It wasn't just receipts. It was the secretive phone calls, the late nights at the office, the way you've been distracted and irritable." She stood and walked around the island to put her hands on my shoulders. "John, I love you. Please let me help you." I looked into the eyes of the woman I had loved and trusted for over a decade and saw a stranger. In that moment, I knew two things with absolute certainty. Linda was lying, and I needed to find out why. "I think I need some air," I said, stepping back from her touch. "John, we'll talk more later," I replied. I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my keys, and left the house. As I sat in my car in the driveway, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her again, not until I knew the full truth. The accountant in me needed all the data before making a conclusion. Linda had just declared war with her lie. She didn't know it yet, but she had just made an enemy of the most methodical man she'd ever met. People often mistake quiet for weak. They confuse methodical with slow. Linda had always teased me about my meticulous nature, my need to check and double-check everything. "Live a little, John," she'd say. "Not everything needs a spreadsheet." But now, my so-called obsessive attention to detail would be my greatest asset. I drove to a coffee shop across town, ordered a large black coffee, and opened my laptop. First, I needed to safeguard what remained of our finances. I couldn't move money without Linda being notified, but I could set up alerts for any transactions over $100 on all our accounts. At least I would know immediately if she tried to take more. Next, I logged into my email and created a new address under a pseudonym. I'd need it for what came next. As an IT security consultant, I had skills most people don't. I wasn't a hacker. I worked on the defensive side, protecting companies from data breaches. But I knew enough about digital forensics to begin piecing together what was happening in my own home. When I returned 3 hours later, Linda was already in bed. She'd texted me twice, playing the concerned wife. "I'm here when you're ready to talk, and I only want what's best for us." I replied with just enough contrition to seem believable. "Need time to think. Don't wait up." The next morning, I left early for work, avoiding another conversation. Linda sent another text around noon. "I've made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in gambling addiction. Saturday at 10. Please come. I'll be there with you." I replied, "Okay." Let her think I was coming to terms with her narrative. At work, I was on autopilot, my mind consumed with uncovering the truth. During my lunch break, I called our cell phone provider and gained access to our detailed call and text records for the past year. Linda and I were on a family plan that I'd set up and paid for. The customer service representative was hesitant at first, but I knew exactly what information to provide to verify my identity. That evening, I downloaded the records and began my analysis. Linda's call history showed frequent communications with a number I didn't recognize. Several calls per week, often during her lunch break or when I was working late. Many of them lasted 30 minutes or more. I ran the number through a reverse lookup service. It belonged to Mark, my brother. The room seemed to tilt slightly as I stared at the screen. Mark and I had never been close. He was 5 years younger, more outgoing, less focused on building a stable future. but he was still my brother. We saw each other at family gatherings, occasionally grabbed a beer when he was in town for business. He'd been at our house for dinner just 2 weeks ago. I scrolled through the text message logs. The content wasn't visible, only the metadata, dates, times, numbers. But the pattern was unmistakable. Linda and Mark exchanged texts almost daily, often late at night. This wasn't proof of an affair, I told myself. Maybe they'd become friends. Maybe she was planning a surprise for me with his help. Maybe. But the money transfers to the Cayman Islands couldn't be explained away so easily. I needed more evidence. The next day was Friday. Linda mentioned over breakfast that she had a girls' night planned with her friends from work. "It might be good for us to have a little space before tomorrow's appointment," she said, stirring her coffee. "Give you time to process?" I nodded, playing along. "You're probably right." As soon as she left for work, I began the next phase of my investigation. I went to our home office and examined Linda's laptop. She'd always used the same password for everything, a combination of her childhood dog's name and the year we were married. I wasn't proud of logging into her computer, but I needed answers. Her email was the first place I looked. Nothing incriminating at first glance. Then I checked her deleted items. Empty. Too empty. Linda never emptied her digital trash. It was one of those small differences between us that used to seem endearing. I installed a recovery program and let it run. Within an hour, I had access to hundreds of deleted emails. Most were mundane: newsletters, promotions, work correspondence. But there was a separate Gmail account I didn't know about. The recovery program had captured the login credentials from the browser cache. I opened a private browsing window and logged in. And there it was, the full, unvarnished truth. Emails between Linda and Mark going back 18 months. At first, innocent enough, jokes, articles shared, comments about family gatherings, then flirtatious, then explicit, planning meetups when I was traveling for work, complaints about me, my predictability, my caution, my boring attention to detail. Then, starting about 10 months ago, plans, detailed plans. "We could have a fresh start somewhere warm," Linda had written. "Somewhere no one knows us." "What about the money?" Mark had replied. "Starting over isn't cheap, and my business isn't exactly booming. John has always handled our finances. There's more than he's told me about, I'm sure of it. And he never checks the accounts anymore. Not since I took over paying the bills. I'll start small, so he won't notice." I felt physically ill as I continued reading. They'd planned everything. The gradual siphoning of funds to an offshore account, the eventual disappearance. They'd even discussed what story to tell people, that Linda had finally left her controlling husband to find happiness. And most recently, the contingency plan if I discovered the missing money. "If he notices, I'll tell him he has a gambling problem. I'll say I've been moving money to protect us from him, not to take it from him. No one would question it. He's always been so uptight about money. People will think he finally snapped under the pressure." They'd booked tickets to Grand Cayman for May 12th, our anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. I found records of the offshore account, including login credentials. I checked the balance, $147,500, nearly half of our life savings. I downloaded everything, emails, account details, travel itineraries, and saved multiple copies in secure cloud storage. Then I carefully covered my digital tracks on Linda's computer. That night, Linda came home around 11, smelling faintly of wine. She seemed surprised to find me still awake, reading in the living room. "How was girls' night?" I asked, not looking up from my book. "Good. Needed." She hesitated. "About tomorrow's appointment." "I'll be there," I said, finally looking at her. For the first time in our marriage, I saw her clearly, not as the woman I loved, but as someone capable of elaborate deception. It was like seeing a beloved painting suddenly revealed as a forgery, all the same features but fundamentally false. "Thank you." She leaned down and kissed my cheek. "It's the first step toward healing." As she headed upstairs, I called after her. "Hey, have you heard from Mark lately?" I tried calling him today, but no answer. The slight stiffening of her shoulders was almost imperceptible. "No, not for a couple of weeks." "Why?" "No reason. Just wondering how he's doing." That night, lying next to the woman who had planned to abandon me, I began formulating my response. Linda and Mark had been meticulous in their planning, but they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. I didn't go to the therapist appointment. Instead, I called Linda an hour before and told her I couldn't make it. A work emergency required my immediate attention. Her disappointment sounded genuine, but everything about her seemed suspect now. "John, this is important. Your recovery—" "I know," I interrupted. "Reschedule for next weekend. I promise I'll be there." I spent that Saturday implementing the first phase of my plan. With the login credentials I'd recovered, I accessed the Cayman account Linda and Mark had established. Banking in the Cayman Islands is known for its secrecy, but that works both ways. It's also more difficult to trace unauthorized access. I didn't take the money. Not yet. First, I needed to establish a paper trail that would protect me later. I set up a meeting with Harold Winters, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on a case involving corporate espionage the previous year. I didn't tell him the full story, just that I suspected financial impropriety involving my accounts and needed professional documentation. "Divorce coming?" Harold asked bluntly as we sat in his office Monday morning. "Just covering my bases," I replied. Harold nodded. He'd seen it all before. "Smart man. Let's see what we're dealing with." Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained the facade at home. I attended the rescheduled therapy appointment, where I played the role of a man struggling to admit his gambling problem. Dr. Reynolds seemed slightly confused by my calm demeanor and the lack of typical addiction patterns, but Linda was quick to fill in the gaps with fabricated examples of my erratic behavior and unexplained absences. "John has always been good at hiding things," she told the therapist, reaching for my hand with feigned support. "He keeps everything bottled up inside." I squeezed her hand in return, thinking how right she was, though not in the way she imagined. Meanwhile, Harold had documented every unauthorized transfer from our joint accounts. I also learned that Linda had taken out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge, a feat that required forged signatures and likely the help of someone at the bank. Another $175,000 diverted to their escape fund. "This is serious fraud, John," Harold warned. "Multiple felonies. Whoever did this could face substantial prison time." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "And what about recovering the funds?" "That's the tricky part with offshore accounts, but not impossible, especially with the documentation we've compiled." The following weekend, Linda mentioned that her sister Kathy was having a small crisis and needed her support. She'd be gone overnight Saturday to Sunday. "Take all the time you need," I said. "Family is important." As soon as she left, I called Kathy directly, expressing concern about Linda's stress levels and asking if she was holding up okay with everything going on. "What do you mean?" Kathy asked, clearly confused. "I haven't seen Linda in weeks." "Oh, my mistake," I backpedaled smoothly. "I must have misunderstood. I thought she was heading your way this weekend." After hanging up, I called Mark's apartment. No answer, as expected. I drove by later that evening. His car was gone. I used the opportunity of Linda's absence to set up small, discreet cameras in our home office and bedroom. I'm not proud of this step, but I needed to know if she was destroying evidence or communicating with Mark in ways I couldn't track electronically. The footage from that weekend confirmed my suspicions. Linda returned Sunday evening and immediately went to the office, where she placed a call on a prepaid phone I hadn't known about. "It's all going according to plan," she said to the person on the other end. "He suspects nothing. Yes, the final transfer is scheduled for next week. Don't worry about John. By the time he figures anything out, we'll be long gone." That night, I made my move with the offshore account. Using a series of VPNs and anonymizing tools, I initiated a complex set of transfers. I didn't simply withdraw the money. That would have immediately alerted Linda. Instead, I moved it through a labyrinth of temporary accounts, eventually landing in a secure account Harold had helped me establish. The process took nearly 6 hours to complete, but by morning the Cayman account showed the same balance, while the actual funds were safely under my control. It was time for Phase 2. The next challenge was the social narrative Linda had been crafting. Over the past several weeks, she'd been systematically undermining my reputation among our friends and family. Casual comments about my concerning behavior, hints about financial stress, suggestions that I wasn't quite myself lately. I discovered this when my mother called, asking with poorly disguised worry if everything was okay with my finances. Later that week, my friend Dave invited me for beer and awkwardly offered to lend me money if I needed it. "Linda's worried about you, man," he said, studying my reaction. "We all are." I thanked him but deflected, neither confirming nor denying Linda's implications. Let her think her strategy was working. Instead, I began laying groundwork of my own. I scheduled a dinner party for the first Saturday in May, just 1 week before Linda and Mark's planned departure. I told Linda it was my way of coming clean to our closest friends and family, seeking their support for my recovery. "That's a huge step, John," she said, visibly pleased. "I'm proud of you for being willing to be vulnerable." I asked her to handle the invitations. "I want everyone important to us to be there, even Mark, especially Mark. I need my brother's support too." If Linda found this request suspicious, she didn't show it. She was too close to victory to question her good fortune. In the days leading up to the dinner, I finalized my preparations. Harold had completed his forensic analysis, documenting every fraudulent transaction. I had copied all the incriminating emails and text messages. I had recorded phone conversations. I had documented Linda's lies to the therapist. I also consulted with Patricia Lawson, a divorce attorney known for her ruthless efficiency. I laid out everything I'd discovered and asked for her assessment. "This is one of the most clear-cut cases of marital fraud I've seen in my 20 years of practice," Patricia said, reviewing the evidence. "The premeditated nature, the elaborate deception, the involvement of a family member, the courts will not look kindly on any of this." "And what can I expect in terms of a settlement?" Patricia's smile was sharp. "With this evidence? She'll be lucky if she doesn't serve time. As for division of assets, I'd be shocked if she received anything beyond personal belongings. The fraud nullifies any claim she might have had to marital property." The night before the dinner party, Linda seemed almost giddy with anticipation. She spent hours preparing the house, planning the menu, selecting the perfect outfit. In her mind, this was the final act of her performance, the culmination of her masterful deception. After this, she would be free to start her new life, wealthy and unburdened. "It's going to be a memorable evening," I said as we got ready for bed. "It certainly is," she agreed, kissing me on the cheek. "I'm proud of you for taking this step." I smiled in the darkness, thinking how right she was, though not for the reasons she believed. The dinner party began at 7. Linda had outdone herself with the preparations: fine china, crystal glasses, elaborate flower arrangements. 14 people gathered around our dining table. My parents, Linda's parents, her sister Kathy, my cousin Sophie and her husband, 2 couples we'd been friends with since college, Mark, and his date, a convenient cover for his relationship with Linda. The first 2 courses proceeded smoothly. Linda was the perfect hostess, refilling wine glasses, encouraging conversation, casting concerned glances my way as if preparing everyone for my difficult announcement. Mark avoided direct eye contact with me but seemed relaxed, occasionally exchanging what he thought were subtle glances with Linda. No one else would have noticed these small interactions: a brief touch as she served the salad, a shared look when someone mentioned future plans. After the main course, Linda gave my shoulder a supportive squeeze. "John has something he'd like to share with everyone," she announced, her voice gentle but carrying the practiced tone of someone who has rehearsed this moment. All eyes turned to me. I stood slowly, glass in hand, feeling a strange calm settle over me. The time for deception was over. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began. "As Linda mentioned, I do have something important to share." I paused, taking a sip of water. "For the past several months, Linda has been telling many of you that I've been struggling with a gambling addiction." Sympathetic nods around the table. My mother reached over to pat my hand. "She's explained that I've been secretive, that I've been losing large sums of money, that she's been trying to protect our finances from my destructive behavior." Linda smiled encouragingly. "There's just one problem with this story." I set my glass down carefully. "I've never had a gambling problem." A confused silence fell over the table. "What I do have is evidence of something far more troubling." I reached beside my chair and lifted up a leather portfolio I'd placed there earlier. "I have documented proof that Linda and Mark have been having an affair for over a year and have been systematically stealing from our joint accounts to fund their planned escape to the Cayman Islands." The room erupted in gasps and confused exclamations. Linda's face drained of color. Mark half rose from his chair, then sank back down. "John, what are you talking about?" Linda's voice shook with what might have sounded like genuine confusion to anyone who didn't know better. This is crazy." "Is it?" I opened the portfolio and began distributing copies of emails, bank statements, and phone records. "Here are emails between Linda and Mark discussing their relationship and their plans to take my money and disappear. Here are records of transfers to an offshore account totaling over $320,000, including a fraudulent second mortgage on our house." Linda's mother let out a small cry. My father was staring at Mark with undisguised disgust. "John, you're making things up because you're ashamed of your addiction," Linda tried, but her voice lacked conviction. "Tell them, Mark." Mark looked like he might be sick. "Linda, stop. It's over." For the next 20 minutes, I methodically presented the evidence of their betrayal. The secret phone calls, the hotels booked in cash, the offshore account, the scheduled flights to Grand Cayman on our anniversary. "And here's the cruelest part," I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside me. "When Linda realized I'd discovered the missing money, she didn't come clean. Instead, she fabricated a story about me having a gambling addiction, a lie she's spent weeks spreading to everyone in this room. She even arranged therapy sessions where she gave detailed accounts of my non-existent gambling binges." Linda pushed back her chair abruptly. "This is insane. I can't listen to any more of this." "There's just one more thing everyone should know," I said as she stood. "The money you and Mark stole, it's gone." Linda froze. "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean the offshore account you set up has a balance of exactly $0. Every penny has been recovered and placed in a secure account pending legal proceedings." Mark's face contorted with anger. "You had no right—" "Actually, I had every right," I corrected him calmly. "It was my money, fraudulently obtained through forged documents and unauthorized transfers, a fact that has been thoroughly documented by a forensic accountant and reviewed by my attorney." The dinner party dissolved into chaos after that. Linda's parents left immediately, her mother in tears, her father unable to look at his daughter. My parents stayed, my mother holding my hand while my father made calls to arrange for a hotel room for me that night. Mark slipped out during the commotion. Linda alternated between tearful denials and angry accusations, but the evidence was irrefutable. When she realized she couldn't salvage the situation, she locked herself in our bedroom, refusing to come out. As our friends awkwardly made their exits, offering stunned condolences, Dave pulled me aside. "Jesus, John, I had no idea. When Linda told us about the gambling, we completely believed her." "That was the plan," I replied. She's always been convincing. After everyone had gone, I packed an overnight bag and prepared to leave. Linda emerged from the bedroom, her face blotchy from crying. "You've ruined everything," she said, her voice raw. "No, Linda, you did that all on your own." Her expression hardened. "You think you've won? This isn't over." I looked at her, this stranger wearing my wife's face, and felt only a deep weariness. "Actually, it is. The legal proceedings start Monday. I suggest you find a good attorney." As I walked out the door of what had once been our happy home, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The weight of deception had been lifted, replaced by the lighter burden of truth. The legal proceedings were swift and decisive. Patricia Lawson was as efficient as promised, presenting the evidence of financial fraud, forgery, and conspiracy so compellingly that Linda's attorney advised her to accept a settlement rather than risk a trial. The terms were exactly what Patricia had predicted. I retained the house, our remaining savings, and my retirement accounts. Linda received only her personal belongings and her car. The fraudulently obtained second mortgage was investigated by the bank, which pursued its own action against Linda when they discovered one of their employees had helped process the forged documents. Mark faced his own legal troubles. His business partners, alarmed by the revelations, initiated an audit that uncovered financial improprieties there as well. He lost his partnership and his professional license was suspended pending investigation. My parents, devastated by Mark's betrayal but supportive of me, tried to maintain relationships with both their sons. I didn't discourage this. Family bonds are complicated, and despite everything, Mark was still their child. As for the social fallout, it was both better and worse than I'd anticipated. Better, because most of our friends rallied around me once the truth was known. Worse, because I discovered that the human tendency to gossip meant that my personal tragedy became the subject of speculation and whispered conversations far beyond our immediate circle. 3 months after the dinner party revelation, I ran into Linda's sister Kathy at a local cafe. I almost avoided her, but she approached my table with an unexpectedly friendly expression. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Please?" Kathy stirred her coffee for a moment before speaking. "I want you to know that none of us had any idea what Linda was doing. We're all horrified isn't a strong enough word. I never thought you knew," I assured her. "She's staying with our cousin in Philadelphia," Kathy continued. "Working as a receptionist. It's quite a step down from her executive position." I nodded, unsure how to respond. I didn't take pleasure in Linda's reduced circumstances, but I couldn't summon sympathy either. "Have you heard about Mark?" Kathy asked. "My mother mentioned he's moved back to their place temporarily." "And his legal issues?" I shook my head. "I'm not involved in that." Kathy hesitated, then said, "Linda still insists it was all Mark's idea, that he manipulated her." A short, humorless laugh escaped me. "She always was good at shifting blame. For what it's worth, I don't believe her." Kathy's eyes held genuine regret. "I'm sorry for what they did to you, John." As Kathy left, I sat thinking about blame and responsibility. In the end, it didn't matter whose idea it had been originally. They had both chosen deception. They had both betrayed me. And they were both facing the consequences of those choices. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house. Too many memories, too much pain embedded in those walls. I bought a smaller place closer to downtown, a fresh start. I declined to press criminal charges against Linda, despite Patricia's recommendation. The financial penalties, social ostracism, and destruction of her career seemed punishment enough. Some might call this weakness, but I saw it as reclaiming my own humanity. I refused to let bitterness define my future. As for Mark, our relationship was beyond repair. My parents continued to hope for reconciliation, but some betrayals cut too deep. Perhaps time would eventually dull the edge of that pain, but I wasn't counting on it. 1 year to the day after I discovered the first suspicious transfers, I received an unexpected letter. The return address was Philadelphia. John, I've started therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind where I manipulate someone into believing lies about my husband. My therapist suggested I write to the people I've harmed as part of my recovery process. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I understand now how profoundly I betrayed not just your trust, but your kindness, your integrity, and your love. The woman you married disappeared long before you discovered the missing money. I lost myself in a fantasy of who I thought I wanted to be and what I thought I deserved. The irony is that I had everything I could have wanted already. A husband who loved me, respected me, and treated me with unfailing honesty. I'm not asking for another chance. That would be insulting to us both. I only want you to know that I recognize the depth of my failure as your wife and as a human being. I hope you find happiness again, John. You deserve it more than anyone I know. Linda. I folded the letter and put it away in a drawer. Whether her remorse was genuine or another manipulation didn't really matter anymore. I had moved beyond the need for her apology. People sometimes ask if I have trouble trusting after what happened. The surprising answer is no. Linda and Mark's betrayal taught me that trust isn't naivete. It's a choice we make with open eyes. I choose to believe in people's better natures, while also paying attention to the evidence in front of me. The accountant in me still tracks the numbers carefully, but now I count things that truly matter. Moments of connection, experiences that bring joy, opportunities to grow. The ledger of my life balances differently these days, and I'm learning that sometimes the most meticulous calculations are the ones that have nothing to do with money at all. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.